Welcome to WP Coffee Talk. Thank you to all of our sponsors, and especially to our espresso level sponsors, Helix Managed WordPress Hosting, for both their sponsorship and for hosting our site, and to Expander Digital for both their sponsorship and providing SEO services to us. Now enjoy the episode. Welcome to the next edition of WP Coffee Talk, where I sometimes forget to put it in gallery mode. And there you go. So now it just jumped, which is better because I do have a few that I was like, oh no, and it jumps back and forth. But you know, I'm still learning. I'm still learning. But you are the pro at this. I am the newbie to the podcast world. I've been doing this about 3 months, and I don't know how long you've been doing it, but I'm hoping you'll tell us when I have you introduce yourself, because I know that you've done a lot more podcasting than I have. I think my very first podcast where I was a guest was less than a year ago, so this is still a fairly new experience, and I'm loving it.
Yeah,
But
cool.
yeah, it's so fun. So my guest I always say this evening because I'm usually recording in the evening, but my guest today is Bob. And Bob, I just forgot your last name because I'm like WP Bob.
Yeah, just call me Bob WP. That's all. You don't even need to worry about my last name. Nobody knows it, so.
Well, it is Bob Dunn, and it just popped back in my head, so that's a good thing. And I think that you and I have been connected through social media for a while, and then last year at WordCamp US, I believe was the first time we actually met face to face.
Yeah,
And it was
exactly.
kind of nice to be like, so that's who you are.
Yeah.
I think that was right before the baby tried to eat your microphone when you were with Pat
Yeah, right.
Mauer's
Yeah,
little girl.
yeah. Then once I met you, I kept, coming back to the booth there and bugging you, and it's like
Yeah.
you were probably thinking, Jesus, is he ever gonna go away? He keeps coming back here.
We were meant to be friends. That's all there is to
Yeah.
it. So, Bob, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay, I'm right now I'm a blogger and podcaster. So that's essentially all I do. I have 4 sites, 4 blogs, 3 podcasts. Been doing WordPress for about 12 years and podcasting since 2014.
That's a little bit longer than me. Sounds like you got right in on the ground floor of podcasting when podcasting was first starting to become a thing. But yeah, we're gonna talk a little more in a little while about your podcast experience. I'm gonna pick your brain a little bit, and before we even get right into it, I'm gonna ask your indulgence in the fact that I'm still learning what I'm doing. So I'm sure afterwards you can give me some tips.
No problem. It's amazing. I've done so many weird things. I was on a podcast recently and I had the wrong microphone. I didn't have the right one. It was going through the computer. Another time I was doing a podcast with somebody and I realized I hadn't hit the record button until halfway through. So, it happens. It happens no matter how long you do it and how
Yeah.
well you think organized you are. Stuff happens.
I keep meaning to write up my procedure and protocol, and I just haven't got around to it yet. But maybe if I actually did that, I'd be a little more organized. I'd like to
Yeah.
think so anyway.
Yeah.
Well, as you know, I ask everybody to show me their mug and tell me what's in it. So what mug did you bring us this evening to show?
I went away from the stereotype WordPress mug, which I have a few of those different vendors, but mine is a museum, the Metropolitan Museum of Art from New
Mm.
York. So I'm being a little bit classy, and I believe this is a Costa Rican coffee in there. That's what our
Ooh,
latest we got from Starbucks.
very nice. Is it with caffeine or without?
Well, with yeah,
Yeah.
except it's my smaller mug for this late in the day. So,
Yes. Well, I've got the WordPress mug today. So I've got my WordCamp Hamilton mug. It was one of my speaker gifts.
Oh,
I think
cool.
this was this year's. I have two in a row, so I think this one was this year's. And I'm drinking tea. I've had a lot of caffeine already today. This is still caffeinated tea, so I will still, if I'm like messaging you at 3 a.m, you know why.
Yeah, right. I'll be sure to mute my phone.
Exactly. I think I don't know if I have your. Oh no, I do have your phone number.
Oh, oh no! I definitely gonna mute it now.
There you go. Tell us, how did you get started with WordPress?
Back in 2007, I had previously, my wife and I had a business graphic design, copywriting, marketing business for 17 years. So we were in the print world and everything. I begrudgingly entered the web space. Didn't really like doing it. It was like, oh, this HTML, I don't like it. I was looking for something easier for myself, especially easier for my clients. And I think got a little intrigued with the blogging end of things. So that's what had me looking at WordPress in around, like I said, 2007. Got in there just to play around with it. Oh, this would be cool for blogging. Then I thought, man, this makes it pretty easy for somebody to just need a simple site. Back then, most of my clients were brochure type sites, real basic. And I thought, boy, this looks a lot better than, a lot of the stuff you can do with HTML. So I just, after playing with it a year or so, I started using it for clients and was like, cool, this is impressive. And yeah, it just kind of snowballed from there.
I love when somebody says, I begrudgingly got into the internet space, who now makes their entire living out of the, because you're not alone in that. I've heard that story over and again. And it's just, I think, amazing what the WordPress world can do for us and how it pulls us all together. And it there's a little siren song in there somewhere too, kind of calling us into it, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, but there's no crashing on the rocks, so we're okay.
Yeah, no.
It's a good thing. So you are, I'm sure, a connoisseur of websites. You've probably seen it all. When you look at other sites in general, I'm not asking you to pick on mine or anybody in particulars, but what's something do you think that people should focus more attention on to make their sites better or stronger or both?
That's interesting because I think and it's probably because I spend so much time tweaking my own site. It's just making it easy to find things, making it user friendly. And that's a real broad, but I don't sit there and judge a lot by how it looks. If I go in there and I think, okay, I'm finding what I want, I can do it here and there. Those are the things that matter to me. And a big one that matters to me is some kind of and I don't especially expect this from large corporate websites, but an about page. I want to see who these people are. WordPress developer, I want to see who you are. Just tell me a little bit. You don't have to tell me your life story, but I don't particularly like just landing, even on a small company page, it says we're a team of, dedicated professionals who will blah, 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 blah. It's like, okay, what? Do you have a team of 5? Do you have, I don't need everybody's history, but even show me some faces, something. So that's my big thing that I always look at when I go to a site for the first time. And if it's somebody I'm a little bit intrigued with, or, who's behind this product, I find that about page. And sometimes, I have to go down the footer, I have to go somewhere, but as long as I can find it. If I can't, it's like, okay, well, this already is not starting off well for me. So that's a huge one, the usability, but to get to really the specifics, I look for that about page.
Like you said, especially on those smaller organizations where trust has to be earned. So like, if you're on Amazon or you're on, Coca-Cola, you're on these huge grocery store websites, they've already earned your trust in other ways. But if you're going to spend thousands of dollars with a web designer, you kind of want to know who they are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep. And even, sometimes it's news sites, it's these WordPress sites that people put, sites like mine, they do tutorials and stuff. It's like, who are you? Why are you doing this? Do you have another job? I mean, it's just something to give me some indication. So.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. You may be the first person who said that too. So,
oh, okay. Well, I always have to be unique, No, I'm just kidding.
Well, it's nice though to have different content, so everybody doesn't always say the exact same thing. We hear a lot about accessibility, and that's definitely important, but it's not the only important thing in building a website.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's pretty cool. I love that. And there's been conversation in the past about whether the about page is really important or not, and I've continued to argue that it is. If somebody doesn't care, they're just not going to click it, but the people who do care are still looking to find it.
Yeah, and then I'm not sure if it's so much now, but just a couple years back, I think our about page was always at least ranking in the top 5 somewhere of
Yeah.
most visited page. So obviously people
It's
were
relevant.
curious or wanted to know something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still relevant for sure. What's something that you wish you had known when you started working with WordPress that you've learned since that might have made your life a little easier along the way?
Ooh, I thought about that, and that's a tough one because it just kind of all blends together. But it's like going back. Um, Maybe it's I think it's what I would have liked to or realize at the beginning was not to. Here's just one of them: not to worry so much about the theme. I think, and I think I kind of carried that on in my early when I would train people and stuff, because when you were first getting into WordPress and you got excited about it and you started doing sites for yourself or somebody else, it seemed like I remember, always spending so much time looking for a theme. And, I felt like everything had to be right. And I learned real quickly that most people that are looking at my site don't care about a lot of these small little details I may be thinking they should care about. It ends up being more of a, oh, I need this. Well, do I need this? Or is it just because I think I need it? So I
Mm,
think that theme thing was something I wish I would have in the beginning kind of understood, that maybe it was easier to change themes than it really
mm,
seemed. I thought, if I get this theme in there, it's like, oh, this is the look of my site. I'm going to be stuck with this for a while. And then once I realized, which was probably a horrible mistake, realizing I could change my theme, then I was doing it all the time. Oh, I don't like this. I want to change this. It's not working for this particular part and stuff. So I became almost the opposite, where I'm like, look, I'm a bit neurotic when it comes to themes. So, so
mhm,
it's that, and that's just, one thing. But yeah, I'm sure if I really sat down, I'd probably think of a lot of different things. But it was surprisingly smooth for me,
mhm.
not
Good.
being a developer, a designer, or anything. It went really well, and I'm somebody that I adapt easy,
Mhm.
so I don't often sweat the small stuff. So
Very
I
good.
don't make. I thought of it, and I still think of WordPress. I mean, there's a lot to WordPress, but I still think it's one of my tools that I use. It does
Mhm.
the job, and if certain things don't click in right, I don't worry about it. I just move on. I'll figure it out.
Yeah. You reminded me that when I was first starting out, I could spend hours and even days in the theme repository looking for free themes because I was still broke, starting out, so looking for free themes that would work. And was so frustrated always that as soon as you put the theme in, it never looks like the
Yeah.
product page does. It's like, what do I have to do to make it look like that? Then you spend all the time, it's like, oh, I don't like it.
Right, right. Yep.
So you
That's
move on
another
anyway.
big one.
And that's where the page builders now come in really nicely. Whether you're using the Gutenberg blocks or Beaver Builder or Divi, whatever it is you really have a little more flexibility in your design, which is also pretty nice.
Exactly.
Too bad they didn't have those when we first got started, huh?
Yeah, yeah. And I think I actually built one of my first sites back in, I'd say it had to be, I don't know if it's around 2000 or maybe so, was a membership site. And I used one of the first so-called builders, Headway. I don't know if you remember that or ever heard of
No.
it, but it took me a long time. I mean, it was pretty complicated. Of course, it was in the early days. And that thing, I loved it because it was the fact that I could build it from scratch without knowing code and stuff, but
Mhm.
it was quite an adventure at the same time.
My first client site was built in Dreamweaver.
Oh
So,
yeah, okay, yep. I think my first one was built in. I think that might have been my first one too. It was I think it was Dreamweaver, or it was one of those Adobe products. It
mhm.
might have even been the previous one to that. I can't even remember what that was.
It was supposedly WYSIWYG too, remember? But it didn't
Yeah.
quite.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was really funny.
What you see is what you might get.
Yeah, really. If you really hope and pray for it.
Fingers crossed as I push
Yeah.
that publish button,
Yeah.
right? Exactly. when you think back over the talks that you've been a part of, I know I've seen you at some word camps. I know you don't go to a ton of word camps. You're kind of more of a homebody, right? But
Right.
when you go to word camps, when you talk to people, whether it's online or in person, what's a moment or two that was really kind of pivotal for you or inspirational, that made a difference for you in the WordPress career?
Hmm. It's yeah, I think I've been asked that before, and I really struggled with it because I, I, the thing is, and you probably see me at bird camps bopping around. I have so many conversations that sometimes some of them don't even sink in till later. And I'm going to share one. And this was actually I'm cheating a bit because it was WordPress related, but it was WooConf, which was a WooCommerce conference.
Mhm. That's
And
fine.
it wasn't so much that it changed my, my life or my attitude, but it just took me aback and made me understand the reach of it. It was the very first Woo conf, and it was in San Francisco. And I walked in the door. I mean, I hadn't gotten 2 or 3 steps inside the door, and this young man walked up to me. I call everybody young man because they're all young to me, but he was from India, and he said, "Excuse me, are you Bob WP?" Nobody knows my last name, and I kind of paused. I said, "Yes," and he said, "I just wanted to thank you because of your site. I am now a full-time developer in where I live. I'm able to support my family and I'm making a living from WordPress." And he said, "Thank you." And I just kind of, stood there because this was like I'd stepped in. I hadn't even gotten hardly in the door. And I just first oh, well, thanks. Wow, that made my day or made the whole conference. I could just leave now, type of thing. But it realized that, so many of us write and we do whatever and we depend on comments and we social, we're on social talking. And until you hear that something has impacted somebody that far away that you may have never had the chance to meet, you start to really get it. And even though that was, several years after I'd been into WordPress, and I talked to people I met at different word camps, and yeah, it was cool meeting them. And oh, I've been reading your blog and stuff. But that one was particularly like, whoa, I mean, the fact that he kind of turned it around where, I don't know how he learned to be a developer from me. That's kind of, I wasn't going to question that, but, he probably got the basic WordPress stuff.
Hmm.
And yeah, it just showed me that yes, what I've been doing for all these years and what I'll probably continue to be doing, yes, it's doing what I wanted to do. So it was pretty, it was my little moment, but it was impactful to me. And it wasn't just the how good he made me feel, it really made me realize what I was doing was m- made a difference. So
Yeah, that's a great moment of validation for sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. And you probably set him down the path into what he was doing, which is great.
Yeah. So those kind of things, and I think it is all through the talk, different people I meet at WordCamp. It's really cool when you meet somebody that says, "Oh, I'm so and so," and they, I've been reading your blog for 6 years, and you just kind of, well, then I should know you. This is good. I'm meeting you because you're important. So there's that. There's a lot of that you just learn at word camps, and that meeting those people that you've been connected with in some way or other for
Mhm.
years.
That's great. So tell us a little bit more about the blogs and the podcast. So I know you've got 4 blogs and 3 podcasts, you said?
Yeah. So
So
I
you spend a lot of
early
time
in
with
yeah,
those.
yeah. Oh, it's just crazy. Earlier in the year, I decided to take my one site. In March, I was sitting with my one site, like and happy as a camper. And then I decided to do this crazy thing. But I saw the need to split it out. So my main site, which is bobwp.com, has kind of focused over the last, it started out years ago, about 2010 as a beginner, just I did tons and tons of tutorials, and I moved it to e-commerce.
Mhm.
And I talked a lot about WooCommerce. So I saw the audience kind of gravitating to that. But I had all this other content on there too. So I thought, what should I do with it? So what I decided is I made BobWP a WooCommerce focused site that has a podcast, which is WooCommerce focused, Do the Woo. And I do that with Brad Williams from Web Dev Studios.
Mhm.
So then I branched out into these other sites, and without going into the last few months of agony, what has resulted is, so I had another podcast originally on there called the WP e-commerce show, which is more around e-commerce and WordPress, more generic. In fact,
Mhm.
I've had Matt and Devin both on that.
Mhm.
And so, I've talked about a lot about nonprofit fundraising, the
Mhm.
e-commerce space. That is on its own site, the wecommerceshow.com.
Okay.
I have Bob WP Media, which I took anything that didn't fit anywhere else, and I created this site that I can just send people to because it gives you links to all my other sites. So
Mhm.
you can find what interests you or not. You don't have to
Mhm.
go through them all and look at them and say, oh, I'm not into e-commerce. Then my most recent one that I just launched last week is podcasting with WordPress. So that is both a blog and a podcast. I just did my my first official interview, my first episode on that. So that's kind of the mix right now. So there's a
Okay.
lot of e-commerce in those ones, a couple of them, and then there's starting to get into the podcast. Not that I'm getting into it more than I have in the past, but I just felt there was a spot there for it, and I just I'm one to just kind of, okay, I'm going to do this.
Well, I'm gonna definitely subscribe to that last one.
Oh, cool.
See how I can improve my game here.
Yeah.
So you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, but having moved into being, kind of full-time blogging and podcasting, how do you support yourself?
It's through, a lot of it has been through monetizing the site. So it's
Mhm.
been affiliate
Mhm.
marketing, not so much the affiliate marketing you think of, somebody having 50 sites and going crazy and all these niches. I'm able to do that. I've done sponsored posts on my site for
Mhm.
quite a while. I've done podcast sponsorships,
That's
and those
great.
have kind of been in and out, and I'm bringing those to the forefront again.
Mhm.
So it's a challenge. It's not as easy, affiliate marketing or whatever you want to call it. It's a very up and down thing. It's a crazy area.
Yeah.
So it's I work hard to make it work. I'm not,
Mhm.
rolling in dough, and I'm not, living on in some mansion or whatever, but I'm happy with what I'm doing, and it's just continual work and finding
Yeah.
those sweet spots.
And you're not living in a cardboard box either.
Nope, I'm not. So that's good.
Definitely. When I built WP Coffee Talk, I built a subscription. I'm sorry, not subscription. I built a sponsorship model right into it, thinking, yeah, this could be successful. It could be moderately successful. I could record 3 or 4 podcasts and then it just dies. Who knows what's going to happen? But you're my 57th recording so far. We've only released 23, so far so good.
Oh,
And I have a couple sponsors, so I'm not unhappy. So things are starting to
yeah.
pick up.
And it's really interesting, this whole podcasting thing. And my recent one with this Jeff Large, we talked a bit about monetization, and I've been looking at reading a lot of stuff, my own experiences with it. I wish there was you could give somebody a straight answer on how to monetize their podcast. There's
Yeah.
no straight answer, and you never know what you're gonna, what kind of attraction you'll bring to even
Mhm.
possible sponsors. So yeah,
Yeah.
you just gotta try different models and see what
Mhm.
works. And if you hit something almost right away, that's excellent.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. So you enjoy it. That's the most important thing, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
And if you're like me, it's exciting to get to talk to people kind of all over the world too.
Oh man, I just, and I'm trying to get back into the e-commerce one. The toughest part is talking to store owners. And I
Mm.
love talking to them because I've been able to talk to somebody that They deal with artisan shoemakers in South America. There's been some other, some in different areas. A couple, one was a nonprofit, coffee maker, all these different people. And you're right. It's fascinating talking
Yeah.
to these people.
That's one of the things I loved when I first started building sites is I didn't try to put myself into a niche. I just would take any small business or any business that came my way, and I learned so much about so many different industries, and that's what makes it so interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like I could be on Jeopardy for all of the
Yeah.
different websites I built.
Yeah.
Ask me how to cut down a tree. I probably know the answer.
Yeah, really.
So let me move into what I call my rapid fire questions.
Okay.
You take as much time as you need to answer them, but it's kind of like the whole James Lipton at the end of Inside the Actor Studio. Same set of questions for everybody kind of thing. If you were to teach somebody to build a website today, whether it's for their own business or to get started in a business of building sites, what are a few plugins that you would recommend, either by name or by type?
I would definitely. I'd probably think of the ones I've had pretty standardized. Yoast. I use that. I've used it religiously for I don't know how many years on my site. I, get a form plugin in there somewhere. I've used Gravity Forms. I've used WP Forms. I've used a few of those. Something for. Well, I'm not going to get into the optimization. That goes too much sideways. Uh, I do think that I'll put it there. I do like Jetpack.
Mm-hmm,
It's a good starter one. I almost always recommended somebody to install it initially. Maybe they may uninstall it later
mm-hmm.
because they have all the elements in place and they don't need it anymore. But Jetpack's been a big one for me. And boy, I'm trying to think. I should know this because I have enough plugins on my site to fill a room or something. Um, you know,
Do you,
it's
do
so
you use
what I find it's so yeah, it's so specific to people's
Yeah.
needs. And I don't find a lot that, I see people like this plugin needs to be on every site. No, it doesn't. So it's really, really tough to sometimes for me to say what's a plugin essential plugin.
Mm-hmm,
And I kind of always go back to Yoast SEO because I think that's a great one to start with.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's easy to use and understand very quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it can do a whole lot more than I know that it does, but I know that I can get up and running with it very quickly because I know what red light, yellow light, and green light means.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes a difference. It's like, oh, it's still red. What am I missing? That's funny. At any point in your WordPress journey, whether it was an official type relationship or just somebody kind of took you under their wing, have you had a mentor? And who was it?
I wouldn't say I'm gonna kind of switch that around a little bit instead of
Uh-huh.
mentor. One of the people I most highly respect in the space, and that would be Pippin Williamson.
Okay. From Sandhills.
Pippin is always just I don't know. There's just something about Pippin. I've had the chance to work with him, as a sponsor and stuff. I've had the chance to talk to him, interview him, and just his values, how he treats his company. Not that anybody, other people don't. There's
Mm-hmm.
just something that has always clicked with me with him,
Mm-hmm.
and I deeply respect how he approaches the whole community, the whole WordPress sphere. So I will
Mm-hmm.
I will leave it at Pippin.
Oh, very good. Well, now you can't say him for the next answer then.
Okay.
You got to think of somebody else because the next question is who's someone that you admire in the WordPress community and
Oh
why?
man, I blew it, didn't I? Yeah, okay.
I'm sure there's more
There's this
than
guy
one,
named
Bob.
Pippin. It's his twin brother. He has a twin brother, so I could use him.
Oh, come
Oh
on. If you're like
man.
me,
Oh,
there's a list
I
as
should
long as
have
your arm.
revisited those questions. Oh man, I just really so I'll think of somebody else I really admire. I'm gonna just throw out a name here. Jeff at WP Tavern. I
Okay.
admire Jeff. Jeff
Mhm.
really is a unique guy, and he's not there anymore. So I
Mhm.
guess I'll say XWP Tavern. But I do, I, I I just like Jeff. There's something that I can't always place exactly what it is with Jeff, but he's just he I guess it's what he brought to the
Mhm.
table in the WordPress space for all those
Mhm.
years. And
Mhm.
I highly respect him for that.
Yeah, kind of like a tell it like it is.
Yeah.
Pull no punches, but in a very respectful way.
Right,
At least that's
exactly.
what I've seen. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, no, definitely a good guy. It'll be interesting to see what he does next.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm
Sure.
watching.
I think we all are. What's something that you'd like to learn in WordPress that you haven't tackled yet?
Hmm. Boy, that's a really good one. Whoa. Nothing to do with code. I'll say that. And that's probably the only thing I haven't tackled much.
Mm-hmm.
I ooh, boy. I cannot think of anything.
Okay.
But I guess it's that I tackle everything that comes out kind of,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
so it's like Gutenberg.
Mm-hmm.
I tackled it and I dealt with it and I'm good
Mm-hmm.
with it and I in fact like it. So there's not really anything at this point that's really calling out that I haven't touched. Sometimes I get tempted to, well, maybe I should learn a little bit code, and then I'm like, I come to my senses, and maybe it was in a dream or a nightmare I had, and I wake up and think, no, that's not gonna happen. So
Why did I think I do that with things at Amazon.com? I'm like, the other day I looked in my shopping cart, I like just put things in there sometimes. I'm like, why did I think I needed a loom and yarn? When did I think I was going to have the time to create tapestries?
yeah.
Delete, delete. I was like, I must
Yeah.
have been
Oh
in a stupor when that happened.
man.
So, so my loom and your coding just got
yeah.
taken out of the shopping cart.
Yeah. Really.
But you brought up Gutenberg, so let me ask you a question about Gutenberg because I know you're, all over the different plugins and looking at different things. How do you think the plugin companies are doing at designing their blocks to integrate with Gutenberg? Because that
You
was
know.
something that we worried about early on.
Yeah. For me, I've seen little bugs.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to speak just from my experience of the plugins I
Sure.
use. So I've had as many as 60 plugins on my site, and people
Mm-hmm.
shake their heads, and I just tell them deal with it. It's not your site. And then I've had I don't know, maybe I have about 30 some on my site now,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they've done a good job. I think it's things I knew things would happen, and usually I'll just send them a message and say, do you know this is happening? And they'll,
Mm-hmm.
oh, thanks for letting us know, or yeah, we're working on this.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing has, yeah, I think people have, I mean, I think the plugins, I can't speak so much to the themes because I don't, haven't changed
Mm-hmm.
themes that much. But the plugins, I think they've done a good job, really. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's freaked out, but they did have time to prepare, and yeah, I'm impressed. I haven't had any, I didn't have to remove any plugins because of Gutenberg, so
Right.
maybe I just was lucky that way.
I don't know. I think things seem to be playing well with each other too. I think the sandbox looks pretty good right now. So, but
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear people's different perspectives. And I know you use different plugins than I do. For example, you're in the e-commerce. The only e-commerce I'm using is donation plugins right now. So, um,
Right.
and Give does a wonderful job. But
Yeah, and Give is on one of my sites, so I know it's doing well.
yeah, we developed our blocks early, but I would expect like WooCommerce to do very well considering they're part of Automatic now. So
Yeah. And I
yes,
use it a lot for my different content stuff. And like I said, a few little weird things here and there. And, some of them, I think some of it's, especially a lot of it that had to do with the editor window. I mean,
mm-hmm.
the editor page, they just had to, there's so many things that could go sideways that those
Right.
little things just kind of squeeze through.
Yeah. I enjoy it. I will admit that I didn't go into it excited about it because learning one more thing is always challenging. But being part of WordCamps, I was kind of forced into it because every WordCamp site now is using the block editor. And so I've learned a whole lot by being on different WordCamp teams now. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's how I feel. I wasn't like, when it happened, it was like when I first went into it, wasn't like, oh boy, I'm excited. Yeah, I'm gonna party Gutenberg down here. It was like, okay, I've got to learn this. Once I learned it, it was like, cool. This is, there's things I see that I like better than the past editor. So I'm with you.
Exactly. So what's one of the biggest mistakes you've ever made with WordPress, and what did you learn from it?
Oh, biggest mistakes. I learned that that little box that you tick that can hide it from the search engines can really work well. I I I can't even remember the reason I did this, but I had to toggle that on one time. I was doing something and I forgot to turn it or untoggle it, and I was searching something else, and one of my posts came up, one of my results came up, and it was this, blank. I can't remember what the error said, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird. So I did a search where a bunch of my posts would come up, and they were all like that. I thought, oh my God, what happened to me? And I went in, and that little sucker was, it was like, whoa, I guess this thing does work, and I fixed it, and it was fine, almost immediately. But that was huge. That was kind of a weird thing, but I've done a lot of stupid things, I guess. And nothing really major. I mean, I probably done all the things that everybody else has done. I sometimes I still stupidly will think I'm so smart that I can do something that's going to crash my site. And I think, oh, wait, is it going to crash my site? And it disappears. And I think, why did I do that? Why did I paste this snippet in when I know I shouldn't do that? I should test it. But I thought it was, so for me, it's a lot of small things that just pile up that I should know by now too. So
I always think that I'm going to remember what the CSS code is that I put into the CSS editor, and then I think I don't need to comment my code, and then I add more, and then I add more, and then I go back later. I'm like, oh my gosh, what does what? Because now I don't remember.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a little thing, but it can slow you down later for sure.
Oh yeah, really.
So let's look at the opposite of that. What's your proudest WordPress moment?
Oh man, proudest. Oh, what would be my proudest WordPress moment? I think I'm gonna assume that it was probably when I built my first site, and the reason being is because of the history I had with and building a site and having somebody pay me for it and being happy with it. And that sounds kind of, well, we've all done that. I mean, if you've done it, but it probably was because it was such a, look, we talked about it before. I did not like building sites with HTML. I didn't want to get into it. It was a pain. And the first time I built a site that looked, somewhat professional, and it was, the client was happy and there wasn't any issues and wasn't weird things going on. It was like, wow, I can do this. So probably there's been others, but I would say, and I would imagine for some people, it'd be almost the same way. It's that first site that you didn't think you could possibly do this, and you actually were able to do it a lot easier than you anticipated.
Yeah, I like that. I do remember pushing publish on that first site and being able to share it and people seeing it. And I'll tell you what, it was, now I look back at it, it was a horrible site, but at the time it was beautiful. But, we're talking, almost 20 years ago now. So
yeah, exactly.
Without the tools we have at our disposal now. So for sure.
Right.
if you didn't work in IT, web, tech, all of that, if you had took all the podcasting and all the vlogging and everything away, what's another career that you might like to attempt?
Well, it's probably a little late for me, but you know, I still always had the dream of being a photographer, particularly a wildlife photographer.
Oh,
It's always
cool.
been something I always thought, and one of the things that has intrigued me, and it doesn't sound glamorous or anything, but I always think of those ones that they get, they sit there for 4, 5, 6 hours to wait for that perfect shot, and then they get that perfect shot. So
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved photography off and on through my life. And I think, yeah, I think if I could just do that, I mean, probably if somebody said, hey, I'll pay you, this much money and you can go out and take pictures of wildlife, I'd say, yeah, okay, bye WordPress, I'm out of here. but it's something I've always wanted to do.
Yeah. I read an article last year about a man who waited 20 years for his perfect shot. Now,
Oh,
granted,
wow.
I mean, he's out there taking other pictures and everything, but he got the perfect shot of a kingfisher doing a dive straight into the water, and the water was perfectly clear, and the bird is reflected in the. It's just gorgeous. So you have
Yeah,
to
yeah,
look up that one. It's amazing.
yeah,
Yeah,
I will.
yeah. I'll share some of my wildlife photography with you too. I do a lot in my spare time. On weekends, I go out driving and looking for birds and things. So I
Yeah.
am quite the amateur, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is.
So, what's something on your bucket list?
Oh, right now, I'm just kind of enjoying just being mellow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really have anything on the bucket list that I have to do right now. Yeah, my bucket list is pretty empty right now. So nothing comes to mind
Mm-hmm.
that's I would like to. The other day somebody on Facebook asked if you were stuck on a plane, a long flight, who would you like to sit by?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that can't be on my bucket list, but I'd still like to have a long conversation with John Cleese from Monty Python.
Mm-hmm.
I mean except that's not going to happen, so it's not really a bucket list. But I
It's
wish
a wish.
I wish he'd be on my podcast. I could talk e-commerce with him or something. I don't
And
know.
suddenly John Cleese is a WordPresser because of Bob
Yeah,
WP.
yeah. I'm sure he'd love talking about that. That's what might make it so fun.
There you go. Mr. Cleese, I don't care what you did. Listen to what I do.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, show us or tell us one of the hidden talents that you might have that people in the WordPress community might not know about.
Hmm. Hidden talents. Um Boy, I don't have a lot of hidden talents. I'm a real boring guest.
No, you're not.
I can do the do you know the song the Pretty Woman by Roy Orbison?
Sure.
I can do the Roy Orbison growl.
Let me hear it.
I
Yes, you
that, see, I can't
can.
do it quite as good. That wasn't quite as good, but I used to really be able to do that growl perfect. And when I do it, people like, whoa, where'd that come from?
Is that what got your wife interested in you? Was that growl?
No, she probably would have thought, what's he doing now?
Hey, baby.
Yeah. And that's not really much of a talent, but and it seemed to be, I used to be able to do it better. Maybe I have to psych myself up for it or
There you
something.
go. A little
But
more coffee or something. I don't know.
yeah. Oh, I know something. Here's something that somebody probably people don't know is we won a business award and we beat out IKEA. So there's something
Wow.
nobody knows. So
That's pretty
that was
amazing.
in our
Yeah.
previous life. We beat out IKEA. We were up against an award with Boeing, but we lost to them. So
Okay.
that's it.
That's pretty exciting though. I in a former Twitter life, that account is now closed, but I used to run an account on holistic healing. and I was followed by the verified account of the Dalai Lama.
Oh, wow. That's
So
pretty cool.
that was pretty cool, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that
and in
is.
another life, I actually have a blog. You can look it up later because it's very funny, called thedailybedhead.com. And it's a picture of how I look in the morning. So that's kind of funny, with stories and, musings and things like that. But I also had a Twitter account for that, and it was suddenly being followed by like I got 40 followers in like 3 days from outside of Toronto in Etobicoke, because the mayor of Etobicoke suddenly started following the Daily Bedhead. It's like, I don't know. So
Yeah.
you just
Go
never know.
figure, huh? Yeah, yeah, that's
You
for
just never
sure.
know where the next one's coming from. So Bob, tell us how we can find you, your websites, and your social media.
Probably the easiest website is bobwpmedia.com. I won't
Mm-hmm,
list all the other URLs because that's
mm-hmm,
where everything is. And
mm-hmm.
then, yeah, just find me at BobWP everywhere else.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to get to know you even better. Am I going to see you at WordCamp US this year?
Oh yeah, I'll be there.
Oh,
I'll
good.
I'll, I'll find you.
Uh, I'm one of the organizers, so I'll be in the red shirt, so you can
Oh,
find me
okay.
there.
Cool.
Well, I look forward to it. Thanks for being a guest. You probably don't get to be a guest as much as you are the host, so it's kind of fun
No,
to put you on the spot for a
really. Yeah,
change.
this was enjoyable. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. And to everybody out there in Coffee Talk land, we'll see you next time. WP Coffee Talk with Michelle Frechette is a proud supporter of WP and Up, whose mission is to support and promote positive mental health within the WordPress community. Visit their website at wpandup.org.